welcome back to the Daily Dose. I don't know if you've been out shopping lately or if you're getting groceries delivered or how you're doing that, but if you go to the grocery store, you'll notice something that's really kind of wild to see, and that's that some of the shelves are pretty barren, but there's one aisle that is not barren at all. You can get everything you would ever want there, and that is the candy aisle. The candy aisle. And other people have noticed this as well, that it's been over the last month hard to get eggs and really hard to get toilet paper and other paper products and hard to get meat or chicken. It's been hard to get that stuff. It isn't hard to get candy. And that's because in crisis, it sobers us up to what's really important. And the Apostle Peter in today's Daily Dose is going to say, listen, that's not something you should have just in the midst of a global pandemic. That's actually something you should have all the time as a follower of Jesus. Here's what he says in 1 Peter 4:7. He says, the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. First thing to notice there, he says, the end of all things is at hand. Now, that doesn't mean that Peter was some sort of tinfoil hat-wearing alarmist who was just kind of walking around with a sandwich board saying, the end is near, the end is near, the end is near. But in the mentality of the New Testament church, they believed they were living in the last days. Jesus rose to inaugurate a new creation. And they believe that the end of all things is at hand and that Christ could return at any time. And we believe that too. So in light of that, he says, therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded. That word sober-minded is actually used 3 times in the book of 1 Peter. It is this word that refers to just seeing things clearly. I remember when I was in high school, and I had not been someone that chewed tobacco, but as a baseball player, I was around people who did. I remember this guy gave me a dip of Copenhagen. It was the first time I'd ever had that, and it was a fresh can, and I'd had that, and I remember driving around with him having this dip in my lip and just getting like really buzzed for the first time and thinking like, whoa, I need to never do that again because that felt a little too good and I could get really kind of into that. And the reality is we have to be sober-minded. We have to think clearly. We have to not be seduced by all sorts of other distractions. That's what Peter's saying. Be self-controlled, be sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. There's a lot on the line these days. There's a lot that's on our minds. There's a lot that's going on in the world. There's a lot of people who need Christ in these last days. And so Peter says too much is at stake for us to spend time in the candy aisle. We've got to get serious. We've got to get our meat. We've got to get our staples. We've got to keep our mind focused on Christ. And we've got to pray with a sense of urgency. So, whatever's going on in your world today, whatever's going on in your life today, let me encourage you to be sober-minded. Think clearly. Think in light of the true story of the world. Think in light of who Jesus is and what he's done for you. Your circumstances do not control how you should be thinking. Take every thought captive to Christ. Remind yourself of who he is and what he's done and the promises that are yours in him. And then pray. The end of all things is at hand. Be sober-minded.